want to thank the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. I'd love to have something like this out in California. I don't know if it would be allowed, but I think it would be a great idea since we're using 10% of the resources. I also want to thank Governor Ritter not only for his great service to the state of Colorado, but for what he's doing today to advance energy policy in the western region. We in California are part of the WEC. We're part of the Western Governors Association. And I think it's critical that we work together in this region to ensure that our energy policies are compatible and provide the best environmental results, but even more important, provide our national security interest as well as our economic interest in terms of jobs. I also want to thank, this is like a National Petroleum Council reunion here, because not only do I work with Scott and Jan, but David has been working on the transportation study and has also been doing a lot of work in California. So I appreciate all of your contributions. I know some of you are saying, what in the hell is a California commissioner doing at an oil and gas conference? And as Scott mentioned, I do chair the Committee on Gas for the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. I was appointed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger to this commission. I served as his appointment secretary. So some could say I appointed myself, but it didn't really work out that way. The governor called me one day and said, I have a lot of things going on with broadband and green energy and other things, and I need somebody I trust, Timothy. You're going to the commission. Bye. And that was it. So I was on the commission, and I've been there ever since. And I'm in my 5th year now. And while we are pursuing a 33% renewable portfolio standard under AB 32, and while our current Governor Brown has said he wants 12,000 megawatts of distributed generation to be a part of that 33%, which at the signing ceremony, he stated an aspirational goal of 40% of renewable portfolio standard. Now, all of you renewable developers in the room are just chomping at the bit because you know that there's no way we can generate all of that renewable energy in California. But more important, natural gas is going to play an important role in that. And since the prior speakers were kind enough to cover many of the statistics that I was going to discuss, which often happens when you're the last speaker, why don't I just go over where I see California as one of 5 commissioners. We're appointed in the state of California. We were originally the Railroad Commission, founded in 1911. You have 3 commissioners here, and I want to give a shout out to each of them. Your president, Joshua Appel, who was, I understand, recently appointed, as well as James Tarpey, who I've worked very close with in the Western region. He has assumed Ron Benz's role as president on the Western Conference of Public Service Commissioners. And most important in my world, Matt Baker, who Commissioner Baker serves as the co-vice chair of the Natural Gas Committee of NARUC. And he has been, his environmental credentials here in the state of Colorado has been a real game changer for this committee because he has developed a relationship with our Energy and Resources Committee that's headed by Commissioner Gene Fox in New Jersey. And as such, we now have legitimate discussions about natural gas as an environmental game changer. That really didn't exist before Matt was appointed as vice chair by our then president, David Cohen. And that's the interesting perspective as being a California commissioner that's involved in national natural gas policies. Now, let me just say that something I should have said in the beginning in terms of my disclaimer. My views do not necessarily represent the views of the California Public Utilities Commission. Personally, I think they should represent the views of the California Public Utilities Commission, but I have to get 3 votes in order to make those law, and that's one of the dysfunctions of California. But with that said, in California, where we discuss natural gas here as an environmental game changer, and even though natural gas falls below California's low carbon fuel standard, the discussion in California is as if natural gas was dirty coal. And as a commissioner that is concerned about rates, as Governor Ritter expressed, and I'm going to cover that more in terms of some of the renewable technologies that are coming into play, I am going to continue to tell the truth about natural gas. California has close to, and I have the Sacramento natural gas proceeding, but if that proceeding passes, we'll have 364 BCFs of gas storage capacity. That puts us at an extraordinarily strong physical advantage in terms of protecting our core ratepayers. Different than Colorado, in our procurement process, we have an incentive mechanism that actually does embrace risk, Susan, and that risk is split between the ratepayers and the shareholders, depending upon the ratio of gains and losses in the procurement. And we do believe in an incentive process. And in that regard, let me commend Xcel. As I was saying to Susan when I flew into Denver and got lost trying to figure out what terminal is it that actually puts you out on a curb where you can get a rent-a-car, I noticed Xcel's advertisements on energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is the number one order under our Energy Action Plan, which is combined with our California Energy Commission. We spend $3.4 billion over a 3-year period in energy efficiency budgets with our utilities. But I've never seen an advertisement in an airport explaining to ratepayers the opportunities that are available for energy efficiency. So when I go back to California, our utilities are going to be very ticked off at Xcel because they're going to hear from this commissioner on why aren't you doing more with that $3.4 billion. But in terms of natural gas's role, as we all know, as we go higher in our renewable portfolio standard, which we did not reach the 20% by 2010. We came out at about 18.7%. But we have in the legislation flexible compliance. But as we move higher in our renewable portfolio standard, until such time that we have the adequate storage technology, and we have opened a proceeding on electric energy storage in California. It's in the workshop stage as we speak. I think this technology is going to be very critical in terms of our ability to achieve reliability for this variable renewable source. But until that time comes, natural gas will still be the firming component for our renewable energy generation. Hence, California remains very dependent on that 87% of imported natural gas. Susan also mentioned the Ruby Pipeline project. I was honored to be the assigned commissioner on Ruby Pipeline. And this was in 2007. And then in AB 32, which is our dominant legislation on renewable energy, was signed by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2006. When we started Ruby Pipeline, the concern was that the conventional gas reserves in the Rocky Mountains, Wyoming, and Texas were all going east. We're all going east. And naturally, that was a concern to California because at that time, the Potential Gas Agency, the Potential Gas Committee, had estimated about a 50-year natural gas domestic life in North America, specifically the United States. So we had a concern, and it was actually the ratepayer advocates that worked closely with El Paso and PG&E in order to establish a shipping price that was very advantageous, and they were pushing me to complete that proceeding as soon as possible. So in 2006, Governor Schwarzenegger signs AB 32. We had Tony Blair and Richard Branson and all kind of movie stars that were going all over the state for these photo opportunities. You know, my governor liked doing things big. You know, we had that kind of gravitas in that administration. But that was the same time that I was fighting to try to get liquefied natural gas terminals along the west coast of California. Because at that time, we thought that we had inadequate natural gas supplies. So renewable energy at that time not only played an environmental role, but it also had a very important resource role. My point is that when AB 32 was signed, there were no significant shale gas discoveries that had been published yet. The 2007 version of Hard Truth did not discuss domestic shale gas discoveries. So my point is that we are pushing a renewable portfolio standard that came into play when we did not have the estimates that we have today on unconventional or shale gas. The concern then that I have is that if you are here in Colorado reducing your coal dependency from 61% to 41%, as I believe Susan showed, then how can my state, California, compete with you in energy costs for purposes of our ratepayers and our manufacturers? This is a very legitimate concern of mine. The EPA rules, particularly the transport rules, will result, according to our research, that coal that you're utilizing in order to achieve EPA standards comes at about the same cost as natural gas. But if we add that 33% renewable cost along with firming, I have concerns. I have legitimate concerns. And that's why I take time to speak to organizations like this or the Competitive Energy Alliance in Arizona. I think that as a region, we have to make sure that our policies are simpatico, for lack of a better term, so that we cannot create too much of the burden on ratepayers that Governor Ritter referred to. In the area of alternative fuel vehicles, we just completed our alternative fuel vehicle proceeding, or the restructuring or fueling phase of that proceeding. And where David's comments would be of some concern to me is, as David knows, in our rulemaking, the investor-owned utilities are not allowed in the market unless they can detect a market failure. We kept our utilities out of that market because we want competition in the refueling area. But an even greater concern is that we are not prepared to make the rate base the banking mechanism for that infrastructure. We feel Californians would be better served by many of you to come into our marketplace and to provide refueling technologies both on the electric vehicle and natural gas vehicle side. Now, as I had discussed with David earlier, like most of our proceedings in California, there is a love affair with the electric vehicle. And I do believe that, as David pointed out, that all of these alternative fuel vehicles can live and operate together, but that electric vehicle is still utilizing a fuel source that is close to 50% coal from a national standpoint. So I am with those that believe that there needs to be more investment and opportunities on the natural gas vehicle side, and for that reason, my office is looking at a potential rulemaking that can put serious attention on compressed natural gas and natural gas vehicles and renewable natural gas, or what we refer to as biogas, in the California marketplace. And as I understand, there's a Natural Gas Act that's being proposed in Congress, and hopefully that will, from the federal side, spur more of an interest in this important resource in California. So in closing, I just wanted to point out that while I am proud of our efforts to continue to advance clean technology, I hosted a convention on the new energy economy in 2008. We had over 800 participants. And I had Van Jones as a speaker, and Governor Schwarzenegger sent a video in, and now Governor Brown, who was Attorney General, was there. And we had a broad cross-section of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, developers, investment bankers, all looking at this green rush that we thought was going to create all of these jobs and all of these opportunities in California. 3 years later, it hasn't come. So I think it's important for California regulators and other regulators in the region to recognize the value of this resource of natural gas, this clean resource, and begin to work with the economic advantage that we have with this resource now, while we continue to develop future clean technologies. But currently, I'm in a state that has double-digit unemployment. And if I look at the African American and Latino communities, that unemployment gets into the 20 percentiles. So that thought that leave no Caucasian left behind or whatever, all these thoughts about what energy efficiency and clean technology we're going to do for disadvantaged communities, we have not seen it. I still believe that energy efficiency is going to play an important role,
but more important is our ability to bring in natural gas technologies. And just in closing, when Governor Brown speaks of the 12,000 megawatts of distributed generation, and that's generation that is below 20 megawatts, I'm hoping that fuel cells will be able to play an important role in that distributed generation capacity. And if not from natural gas, at least from biofuels. I think fuel cells, because of the technology and not having the combustion factor, while not price competitive, can play an important role moving forward. We have a self-generation incentive program in California that is heavily promoting the fuel cells, Bloom Energy and United Technologies and others. So I'll continue to support natural gas appliances, natural gas technology, natural gas policy, because I firmly believe that it brings a definite market advantage to California and the West. Thank you.